I was holding a champagne glass, watching my father-in-law blow out 70 candles, when my sister-in-law turned to me and said, "Erin, can you help the staff bring out dessert?" She didn't even blink when she said it. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like I hadn't just spent the last hour quietly arranging the wine display, because someone forgot to do it. I smiled. Of course I did. I always do. I nodded, set my glass down, and headed for the kitchen like I worked there. They've always assumed I was just the help. Or maybe Ryan's helpful wife. The girl who stays quiet, wears neutral dresses, and shows up early to clean up the mess no one admits they made. But tonight? Tonight was different. Because that staff she mentioned? I hired them. Their uniforms? I approved them. The guest list? The catering menu? The whole damn venue? I own it. Every room. Every fireplace. Every reservation. But no one here knows that yet. This isn't just another Monroe family vacation at Aspen Ridge. This is my resort. And they're all standing in it, eating, drinking, laughing, without a clue. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it for every time they made me feel invisible. For every eye roll when I spoke. For every fake smile that said, "She means well." And I did it for myself. To stop waiting for recognition that was never coming. To finally step into the space I'd been shrinking away from for too long. They thought I was just being nice. But I was building something. In silence. On purpose. And now? Now I'm done being silent. Tonight, they find out. It didn't start with a plan. It started with silence. The kind of silence that builds slowly. Dinner after dinner. Holiday after holiday. I married into the Monroe family 10 years ago. Back then, I thought I was ready. Ready for the wealth. Ready for the tradition. Ready to prove myself. But from the start, it was clear. I wasn't what they expected. Ryan, my husband, is the youngest son. A pediatric surgeon. Kind, quiet, brilliant. When I met him, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw me. Not just my degrees, not just my job title, but me. I hoped his family would be the same. They weren't cruel. That would have been easier. They were dismissive. At our first Thanksgiving, I brought a homemade cranberry tart. Darlene, my mother-in-law, tasted it, smiled politely, then slid it aside. By dessert, it was still untouched, replaced by Lauren's store-bought pecan pie, which got a standing ovation. That's how it always was. I would try. And they would, not notice. Or worse, notice, then ignore. One Christmas, I spent weeks putting together a custom photo album for Ryan's dad. Old family pictures, restored, framed, annotated. At the gift exchange, he thanked everyone but me. Ryan squeezed my hand. You know he appreciated it, he whispered. But he didn't say anything to his father. Not then. Not ever. At first, I told myself they just didn't know me yet. That they'd come around. But years passed. They never remembered what I did for a living. Never asked about my work leading global clean energy systems. To them, I was just Ryan's wife. She does something with computers. And no matter how many power grids I helped stabilize or buildings I retrofitted, I was always the girl with a nice smile and a confusing job title. At one family retreat, a cousin asked if I'd considered going back to school to become a teacher. Something more stable, you know? I didn't respond. I just smiled. But inside, something shifted. I stopped waiting for their approval. I started building something else. I tightened our expenses. No more weekend getaways. No designer bags. Same car, same phone, same laptop for 7 years. And every dollar I saved, I invested. Quietly. Relentlessly. Smartly. I co-founded a consultancy focused on sustainable infrastructure for luxury hospitality. I negotiated partial ownership in exchange for services. I worked late. Traveled light. Asked for no help. When people were watching, I stayed small. When they weren't, I scaled. By the time I was 35, I held shares in 3 boutique resorts and a tech licensing firm that powered their back-end operations. Ryan didn't know the full extent. He never asked. He assumed I was working on some projects. And I let him. I didn't need applause. I needed options. And I was building them. Then, last year, it happened. We were back here, Aspen Ridge. Same fireplaces. Same wine. Same family pretending I didn't exist. And that's when I overheard it. Darlene. Talking on the phone in the hallway. She's harmless, she said. Sweet. But she'll never be one of us. You can tell. The way she carries herself. She didn't say it to me. She didn't need to. That was the moment I stopped hoping. Stopped shrinking. And started planning. It started small. Just a call. One message to a former colleague, Noah Green, who had left the consulting world to manage hotel acquisitions. He was surprised to hear from me. But when I mentioned Aspen Ridge, he went quiet for a second. Then said, "If you're serious, the timing's perfect." Turns out, the resort had been struggling. Old ownership. Legacy debts. Outdated systems. They were looking for a buyout, quietly, to avoid panic among returning guests. It was expensive. Way above what I'd ever spent. But I'd spent years preparing for this moment. I didn't ask Ryan. Not because I wanted to hide it. But because I knew he wouldn't understand. Not yet. I set up a holding company. Snowline Ventures LLC. Clean name. No ties. No whispers in the Monroe circle. Over the next 3 months, I flew to Denver 5 times. Met with lawyers. Auditors. Engineers. I reviewed blueprints and structural reports like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. This wasn't just business. This was mine. A space they loved. A space that had ignored me year after year. And I wasn't going to just own it. I was going to transform it. We finalized the purchase on a quiet Tuesday in April. No press. No ribbon cutting. Just a scanned signature. And suddenly, I owned the place they thought belonged to them. I sat alone in my car for a long time after that. Not crying. Not laughing. Just breathing. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. But I didn't make changes right away. I knew better than to walk in and start swinging. Instead, I met with every department head. Listened. Took notes. The staff had stories. So many stories. Of late paychecks, broken air conditioning, managers who yelled but didn't fix anything. Of how Darlene once demanded a housekeeper unpack her suitcase, then filed a complaint when the woman folded her shirts incorrectly. I kept my face neutral. Took it all in. Then I got to work. We upgraded the HVAC system. Replaced the mattresses. Improved security, added full medical coverage for staff. All without press releases. All without Darlene ever noticing. Because she never looked closely. She never looked at me. Ryan didn't ask about the trips. Or the late nights. He was busy prepping for a pediatric conference in Boston. He kissed my forehead before bed, told me I worked too hard. I nodded, smiled, turned off the light. Then opened my laptop and joined a late Zoom call with the architects. This was how I wanted it. Built in silence. Revealed in one moment. Controlled. Strategic. Permanent. And now that moment was here. The Monroe family had returned to Aspen Ridge for their annual summer gathering. Same rooms. Same expectations. Same dismissiveness. But this time, everything was different. They just didn't know it yet. They arrived with the same energy as always. Matching luggage. Complaints about the valet. Lauren's husband making a big deal about the elevation like he hadn't been here 12 summers in a row. I checked us in with the front desk manager, Rachel, a sharp young woman I'd personally promoted. She gave me a discreet nod and handed over the welcome packet like it was any other reservation. No special attention. Exactly how I wanted it. We were booked into cabin 3. Same as last year. But this time, the linens were softer. The air conditioning worked. And the welcome basket was curated with local, sustainable brands I'd approved myself. No one noticed. The first morning started with mimosas by the lake. Eggs Benedict. And, of course, complaints. Lauren said the croissants were flakier last year. Uncle Ron insisted the new deck chairs were less comfortable. Haley rolled her eyes about the new girl at the spa who didn't recognize her by name. I stirred my coffee. Didn't say a word. Then Darlene chimed in. This place used to feel like family. Now it's so corporate. She glanced at me as if expecting agreement. I nodded politely. That was it. No one noticed I wasn't defending the place. No one thought to ask if I had an opinion worth hearing. That afternoon, I walked the grounds with Ethan, the new property manager. He updated me on final numbers for the upcoming expansion. Noted the improved occupancy rates, and mentioned how guest satisfaction scores had increased by nearly 20% since last season. I thanked him. Told him to be ready for tonight. He smiled. Let me know when to go. By dinner, my heart was calm. Focused. I wore a navy sheath dress I'd owned for years. Hair tied back. No jewelry. They arrived at the private dining hall in full Monroe fashion. Lauren in emerald silk. Haley in gold sequins that caught the light like broken promises. The table was long and glistening. Crystal glasses. Polished silverware. Too many forks. Darlene had chosen the seating chart, of course. I was placed 2 seats from the end. Near the wine. Far from the spotlight. They talked. Laughed. Dropped names of people they hadn't actually met. Then, as expected, the conversation turned. I mean, who renovates a pool deck in peak season? Lauren scoffed. I heard some tech guy bought the place, said Marcus. Probably thinks running a resort is just like launching an app. Darlene sipped her wine with purpose. Well, I just hope the new owner understands that families like ours built this place's reputation. We're not just guests. We're legacy. My hand gripped the stem of my glass. Not shaking. Just firm. Ryan leaned toward me. Maybe we should leave a review, he whispered. Could be helpful. I looked at him. Really looked. And realized. He still didn't know. Of course he didn't. He never asked where I'd been disappearing to each night. Never questioned the calls. The late-night typing. The quiet confidence that had grown in my voice. And I didn't offer it. Not then. I set down my fork. Stood slowly. And excused myself. Outside, the air was cooler than expected. The pines swayed gently. Music drifted from inside, soft jazz and forced laughter. I stepped away from the windows. Pulled out my phone. Dialed Ethan. He picked up on the first ring. Hey, boss. You ready? I looked up at the stars. Then back at the people behind the glass. Yes, I said. Announce it now. No problem, he replied. You sure you don't want to be in the room? No, I whispered. Let them sit in it for a moment. I hung up. And waited. From where I stood outside. I couldn't hear every word Ethan said. But I didn't need to. I knew the script. We'd rehearsed it twice that morning. As part of our ownership transition. He would begin. We're honored to introduce the new majority stakeholder of Aspen Ridge Resort. Someone who has quietly transformed this space for the better over the past year. I watched through the tall dining room windows. The room stilled. Forks paused midair. Wine glasses halfway to lips. And then. Please welcome. Ms. Erin Wallace. It hit like a thunderclap. Followed by dead silence. I opened the door and walked in slowly. Heels clicking against polished wood. Not a sound except for a single gasp. I think from Haley. Lauren's fork dropped onto her plate. Marcus blinked like he wasn't sure it was really me. Uncle Ron muttered something under his breath. But it was Darlene's face that held my attention. She had just taken a sip of Chardonnay. Midway through swallowing. She froze. Her hand trembled slightly. The glass tipped sideways. White wine spilled in a perfect arc across the linen tablecloth. She didn't even notice. And Ryan? He looked at me like I'd just spoken a language he'd never heard. Not angry. Not proud. Just stunned. I stopped at the head of the table. The spot Darlene always claimed as hers. Ethan stepped aside. I picked up the microphone he'd set on the stand. I didn't rush. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't apologize for anything. Thank you for coming, I said. My name is Erin Wallace. Some of you already know me. Some of you thought you did. Polite. Confused laughter scattered across the room. But it didn't last. I've spent the last year making sure Aspen Ridge was brought back to life. Not just with renovations. But with values. Respect. And vision. Darlene shifted in her chair. She still hadn't spoken. I know many of you have memories here. Traditions. Stories that stretch back generations. But legacy doesn't excuse entitlement. That landed. I could feel it. Eyes darting. Throats clearing. I smiled. You're all still welcome here. Just like everyone else now. Another pause. I looked directly at Ryan. No more complimentary upgrades. No backdoor bookings. No discounts for being a Monroe. I handed the mic to the pianist, who was standing in the corner trying not to breathe. And I walked out. No applause. No eye contact. Just the sound of my own steps echoing behind me. I made it halfway down the hallway before I exhaled. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like clarity. Like finally stepping out from under a shadow I hadn't realized was there. I didn't go back to the cabin. I walked down to the lake. Took off my heels. Stood barefoot in the grass. The water shimmered. Still. Silent. And for the first time in years. So was I. I didn't go to breakfast the next morning. Let them sit with it. Let the silence stretch. Instead, I walked the lake trail with Ethan. Clipboard in hand. We reviewed updates on the new wellness center, the dock renovation, and a staff appreciation event I'd greenlit last month. The resort felt lighter. Brighter. Even the air smelled cleaner. Guests passed me with friendly nods. Some smiled. One woman stopped to say, "Whoever's running this place finally knows what they're doing." I thanked her. Didn't correct her. Not yet. By noon. My phone buzzed. Lauren. A voice memo. Her tone? Too sweet. Too breathy. She used the word misunderstanding 5 times in under a minute. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later. A knock at the cabin door. It was Ryan. His hair was messy. Eyes tired. Shirt half tucked in. "Erin," he said quietly. "Can we? I mean, are you okay?" I held the door, didn't invite him in. "You never asked," I said. He blinked. "Asked what?" "What I do. Why I work late. Where I go when I travel." "I didn't think I needed to," he said. Like that explained everything. Exactly. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I let the silence answer for me. After a few seconds, he stepped back and left. Slowly. That evening, the resort held a cocktail event for legacy guests. I'd considered canceling it. But then I realized I didn't need to cancel anything. I could repurpose it. So I did. The room was full of Monroes and their friends, clutching champagne flutes and whispering about the ownership situation. I waited until they were mid-toast. Then walked up to the mic. "Good evening," I said. "Some of you already know me. Some of you thought you knew me." A few scattered chuckles. Mostly unease. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me showed a detailed rendering. An aerial view of the expansion project. Wellness center, eco cabins, and a new public kayak dock, I said. All funded by the new Wallace Women's Initiative. Darlene's eyebrows lifted slightly at the word Wallace. I could see her wheels turning. I paused. Then looked directly at her. "It's named after my mother. Cecilia Wallace. She cleaned motel rooms for 16 years in Oregon. Raised me alone. Taught me that respect is earned, not inherited." Darlene's smile dropped like a curtain. "Next slide. Final one. Also," I added casually. "Starting next season, we'll be reviewing all existing long-term lease agreements. Especially those leased through informal family arrangements." I didn't need to name names. They knew. Lauren's private cabin? Leased under her husband's company. She'd been secretly renting it out on weekends for profit. Over $40,000 in undeclared income over 3 years. Uncle Ron's cabin lease? Technically expired. He'd been grandfathered in through handshakes and holiday gifts. I thanked them all for coming. Stepped off the stage. And walked directly toward the exit. Marcus intercepted me. "Wait, can we talk?" I paused. Smiled. "Of course. You can book an appointment. Through guest services. Just like everyone else now." I didn't look back. That night, I sat alone in my cabin, watching the fire crackle. Not out of bitterness. Not revenge. But peace. Because for the first time in 10 years, I wasn't shrinking myself to fit their table. I owned the table now. 3 days after the cocktail event, I sat alone on the dock at sunrise. Coffee in hand. Barefoot. The lake was perfectly still. Like it had been holding its breath. Just like I had for years. And was finally letting it out. But the resort wasn't calm. Not anymore. By noon, my inbox had turned into a battlefield. Ben's uncle had emailed twice, kindly requesting a conversation about lease renewal terms. I didn't reply. Lauren sent me a second voice memo. She used the phrase, "we're family," twice. And the word, "unfair," 4 times. I listened once. Deleted it. And Darlene. She left a voicemail I've only played once. Her voice was sugar-sweet. But I could hear the edge underneath. Like a smile being forced through teeth too tight. "Erin, honey," she began. "I think this has all gotten a bit dramatic, don't you? We're family. We can work something out. Woman to woman. Right? Woman to woman. From the same woman who once asked if I'd ever considered posture therapy. Engineers tend to slouch, dear." I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. By the end of that week, my legal team had reviewed every cabin lease. Lauren's little subletting side hustle. She'd made over $40,000 renting her family cabin during peak seasons. No reporting. No taxes. We didn't go after the money. We went after the records. 2 weeks later, she received a formal audit request from the state. I didn't say a word. Just forwarded her the contact info of a very good CPA. Uncle Ron? His lease expired 3 years ago. He'd been kept on through favors and familiarity. I gave him 30 days to vacate. Then handed the space to a nonprofit that serves veterans and their families. They moved in by the first week of July. A single dad with 2 kids. Their laughter echoed through the woods like music. And Darlene? She showed up. Unannounced. Wearing pearls. Lipstick a little too bright. Smell of desperation hiding behind perfume. I let her talk. 5 minutes of spinning about appearances. About what people would think. About Ryan. Then she paused. Waited for sympathy. Expecting a nod. A bridge. I opened my desk drawer. Pulled out an envelope I'd had ready for days. Inside. Copies of emails. Photos. And notarized statements from 3 former employees she'd harassed. A housekeeper. A front desk trainee. And a seasonal intern she once called a mouthy little thing, in writing. I'd quietly settled all 3 cases after acquiring the resort. Issued formal apologies. Reimbursed lost wages. Now, with Darlene sitting across from me, I made it clear. If she ever tried to paint herself as the victim, this statement would go public. This isn't about threats, I told her. It's about truth. And what happens when people finally stop staying silent? She left without another word. Shaking. And Ryan? He never fought me. Not once. After the reveal, he spiraled. He started asking questions. About me. About himself. About everything he'd missed. We had long, painful conversations. Some quiet. Some angry. Some just, tired. In the end, I told him something I hadn't fully realized until I said it out loud. I didn't marry into your family to be accepted. I stayed because I hoped one day you would see me. Not just stand beside me. But really see me. And then I added. But now, I don't need that anymore. Because I've built something no one can take from me, not approval, not status, but self-respect. And for the first time, I know it's enough. He moved out quietly a month later. We're not enemies. But we're no longer partners. And strangely, that hurt less than I expected. Because I've reclaimed everything they tried to shrink in me. The quiet girl who brought the salad. Smiled through the insults. Laughed when she was supposed to. She owns the table now. And the truth is, sometimes you don't get closure in the form of an apology. You get it in the form of power. Quiet, earned, undeniable power. And once you have that, no one can take it back. If you've ever been underestimated, pushed aside, or made to feel small in your own story, tell me, how did you take the power back? Drop your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to hear it. And if this one hit close to home, you know where the subscribe button is. I've got more stories to tell.